Hey Dee, I was minding my own beeswax out in the garden. I looked up and guess what was blooming?
Asters, goldenrod, mums.
Well, most of those are kind of done except for mom's. A common lilac.
What? Why?
I don't know. And it wasn't just like one little bloom, like sometimes I have one little bloom in the fall.
Yeah.
It
Yeah, I'll
had
get a stray.
it had quite a few blooms on it. I thought, you crazy shrub.
I wonder, well, that's strange. You can tell us more about it in a bit.
Okay, talk about
You want me to get
strange.
this started?
Yes, go ahead.
Welcome to the Garden Angelist, where we talk about flowers, veggies, and all the best dirt. I'm Dee Nash from Guthrie, Oklahoma, where I garden an acre and a half out of 7.5 acres out in the country.
And I'm Carol Michael from Indianapolis, Indiana. I have a suburban garden measured in square feet, about a third of an acre.
We call ourselves Garden Angelists because we are evangelists for gardening. We love gardening and we would like you to love it too.
Yes, we do love gardening, and we aren't afraid to spill the beans and tell all of our gardening secrets, the good, the bad, and even the ugly. But that's enough of who, what, when, where. Let's move on to this week's episode, Dee.
Hello, Carol. So tell me more about this lilac, this crazy lilac. Why do they do this?
Well, I think what it is, it's a common lilac, and it's had kind of a sad story. And
Because it's common?
no,
Just
it's
kidding.
really a pretty bloom. It's a light purplish and reddish purple, and it's got a little white edge on every little floret.
I have a common lilac. I don't have one like that, but yes, it's huge.
Anyway, it kind of never has gotten off to a great start. I think I had it in a gallon container for about 2 years, and then I finally planted it thinking it was half dead. But anyway,
Poor lilac.
it was so dry in August and stuff. I think a lot of the lilacs around here just drop leaves and stuff. And I think it dropped leaves, and then I had that rain, and then I think it thought, oh, I'll bloom now. And then the problem is I bloom now and it blooms on old wood. So guess what's not going to bloom next spring?
Your lilac.
I'm guessing not. Anyway, there's more to my garden than that lilac.
Okay, let's hear about it. What else is happening?
So I harvested seeds from that white velvet okra that I was so excited to try because I read about it in some old book and I never ate it. Got a whole bunch of seeds now to grow it again next year. Cleared out 2 bags of the zinnias, marigolds, sunflowers, all that stuff. Got cleaned out of the vegetable garden. So now I just need to weed back there, put leaves down, but we'll talk about that later. Slowing down on watering the containers because, it's kind of done.
Mm-hmm.
Admired the autumn crocuses out there. My poinsettia that I am now pointing to.
Yes, I
It's
see
still
it.
quite green.
It's very green.
I keep looking every time I open the blind in here. Every morning I think, are you showing up any flowers? Because I think the flower comes first and then the bracts will turn red.
Sure.
So anyway, I mean, it's just been kind of a warmish, slowish, not too much going on week. I didn't even mow the grass since we last recorded, Dee.
Oh, well, I quit mowing. I just said, I'm done mowing. There's no more mowing going on here. But, it's so dry here that if you mowed, it would be really hard on the grass. So you don't want to do that. But, you know, shall I talk about my garden?
I would love to hear about your garden.
So let's discuss the armadillos first. I'm just going to put it this way. And I found the last one. I did.
You did?
It's gone. That's all I'm going to say about it.
That'll be the mystery.
Yeah. I bet it's hard for people to figure it out. By the way, it is illegal. I looked it up in the state of Oklahoma to just move an armadillo. Like you catch it in.
Oh, definitely.
And relocate
It's
it.
wrong here too.
It's illegal. So,
yep. Same here.
So that armadillo is gone. And yeah, ouch. I just I'm trying to keep my legs crossed because I'm holding this pillow trying to make the sound better and also not bump my drawer so you don't have to edit those out. Little back, those are behind the scenes things. Anyway, so my knee was starting to pop. Okay, so the other thing is that made me feel better because that armadillo, so no more alarms. We have all these alarms all over the garden for armadillos. None of the alarms went off last night. Not a single one.
Yay.
All night.
Yay.
So I think maybe it was, we've caught 8 this year. 8.
Yikes.
One escaped us for a time. So that's a lot of armadillos. They dug up everything in my garden. I've gotten lots of really sympathetic information from other gardeners who are going through the same thing. And I think I may have gotten it. So let's see, what else should I say about it? So that made me think about my garden's bones, because as things shrink back in the garden,
Uh-huh.
out and we're starting to go into winter, you can see the bones better. And also the trees turning, give it more depth, blah, blah, blah. So I'm writing a post about that. And I am also still watering. In fact, I've got some water going on my serviceberry because it doesn't get any supplemental water and it is really dry. And then something ate all my turnips. I said that. I don't know what. And the lettuce is growing really well in the cold frames. I'm going to have some good lettuce. Hallelujah. Some of my other lettuce got bitter because it was too hot, but the weather has cooled off again. And we're supposed to get rain this week. That is my update.
Well, but let's back up just a minute.
Yeah.
I believe we talked about something ate your turnips when we were not recording.
Oh, okay. Well, there's nothing more to say. They were about an inch high and something ate them, like a squirrel or a bunny, although they're in a raised bed. But I think there's a bunny in that raised bed. So I'm going to put wire cloth covers over them. I've got some. I'm going to put them over him to stop it. So we'll see. Because I have more coming up. Because of course I overplanted the seed. So we'll see what happens. I'm waiting for it to rain. Then I'm going to cover them and we're going to see what happens. The thing about
Very
gardening, we can't title it, as you said, we off camera. We cannot title this "Gardening is a Crapshoot" because then it'll penalize us. The algorithm gods will. So we are just going to say it. It is. I mean, I think gardening is hard.
We could title it "Bad Things Happen in Every Garden," but I am not certain.
Negative.
No, we'll come up with something else.
So we're going to play our favorites now. What's your favorite?
Mine is my autumn crocuses again. So Dee, I said, oh,
they're great.
They're not blooming in the back. Maybe they've disappeared.
Oh my.
But I put
then you did a video on Instagram.
Beautiful.
They're a lot blooming.
They're very beautiful and they've been multiplying, and I'm making a note to order more in the summer next year so that I can put more out front, because they weren't out as prolifically in the front as I wanted. So I got to remedy that.
Cool.
Your favorite?
My favorite are the turning leaves. They're starting to turn. We've had a little bit cooler weather, but also they're turning and dropping because it's just hot as blazes. And as you can tell by my throat, we still have ragweed blooming and it's still in the high category. And also the eastern red cedars, I think, are blooming again. Anyway, they're in the high category. I kind of ignore that and go on because I could get obsessed with it. So I'm enjoying the leaves turning. I'm enjoying watching them fall. It's okay. How about our question of the week?
So you came up with this. Somebody asked you if sumac was poisonous.
I get this question every fall because people talk about poison sumac. And poison sumac recently got moved into a different botanical genus. And I'm glad because it's not the same thing. So it's now in Toxicodendron and it's vernix. All right. And so that's poison sumac, which is also known as swamp sumac. And it's a woody shrub or a small tree that grows 9 meters tall. It was previously known as Rhus vernix, which is the sumac genus, but it's really not. And so they've moved it over in this toxicodendron. I'm going to do it again. Toxicodendron. So that's good because there's other stuff in this area which is also poisonous, right?
Yes. And I had read a long time ago that anything that has the oils that's in poison ivy, like the poison sumac, that was in the Rhus, RHUS genus, they moved it all in its own genus because, let's isolate the bad ones together.
Right. So that people won't think that all sumac is bad because it's not.
No.
We both love sumac. I don't love it growing in my garden, and it does in my shade garden because it suckers and kind of takes over. And that's probably smooth sumac, which is Rus glabra. And it grows here and turns a beautiful red in the fall, and it grows in Indiana, right?
Yes.
But we also both have something called aromatic sumac, which I smell when I used to walk my woods before the ticks. I loved the smell of aromatic sumac, which is Rus aromatica, and it smells great. And I think it's the leaves that smell, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it might be the flowers too. I don't know. Anyway, they all bloom in the late spring, early summer, and then they turn this glorious colors in fall. Here they turn red mostly. And then you have something called flame leaf sumac, which I don't know if we have that or not.
I don't know if you do either. I looked this up at Purdue's website because I knew we had some, but I didn't know exactly which ones. And so Purdue has an arboretum up there now, which we used to call Horticulture Park, but I think now it's an official arboretum. And they showed the sumacs that are at that arboretum, and they labeled which ones are Indiana natives, and they labeled fragrant, smooth, and flame leaf.
Okay. We may have flame leaf. I haven't looked it up. I know we have smooth and I know we have fragrant. But the point we wanted to make here is most sumac is not poisonous. And I don't even know if we have the poisonous one in Oklahoma. I really don't think we do.
I don't
I
know
will
about
look it up.
Indiana. You had to look that up because, by the way, just to make things really confusing, poison sumac is poisonous, but other sumacs, I think that flower coney thing is edible, but I'm not going to eat it.
It is. In fact, it's used for all kinds of things and stuff, like tea. All right. So poison sumac can be found in Oklahoma, but only in a few isolated areas along the Red River or in southeastern border of the state. And I was going to look it up for Indiana too.
Yeah, you look it up for Indiana.
I'll look it up. Is it? Yes. It is in the northern counties and the wetlands, but it is less common than poison ivy. So
poison ivy's everywhere. I mean,
yeah, I was going to say we have poison ivy all over the place. So, know your sumac. If you're going to be a forager, go look at a good foraging book or join a foraging group. They can help you. And I just want to say that most of the sumac that you see in our states is beautiful, probably smooth leaf or probably the fragrant one.
Right. And in the right landscape,
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And the truth is, it's in my shade garden and I can't get rid of it. So it runs along the fence. And you know what? I just cut back what I don't want and periodically pull it out and dig it out because you kind of have to dig it out and cut it off because it's a suckering root system. But heck, I have planted a bunch of suckering root stuff anyway. So there you go.
Right. Maybe we'll call this episode Carolyn D's Most Excellent Suckering Roots Plants. Not going to. I'm going to do a quote for flowers. Stay on topic. The only trick of friendship is to find people who are better than you are, not smarter, not cooler, but kinder and more generous and more forgiving, and then to appreciate them for what they can teach you and to try to listen to them when they tell you something about yourself, no matter how good or bad it might be, and to trust them, which is the hardest thing of all, but the best as well. Hanya Yanagihara, a little light.
I think that's true.
Did you give me that one, Dee? Do you have something bad to tell me about myself?
No, I just thought that was true of friends. And I don't think any of us tell bad, if you're a really good friend, they don't tell you bad things about yourself, but they might say, here's something you might think about. You know what I mean? I know you've done that for me. Yeah. So yeah, there you go.
Like, Dee, here's something you might think about. Stop clicking that drawer thing when we're recording.
It drives you crazy. Okay, so which understandable since you have to edit everything. So our flower this week you found because you went to visit a cemetery arboretum, right?
Yes. And we've talked about these before, and I talked about the cemetery arboretum trip a couple of weeks ago, but now is an excellent time to go visit a cemetery.
Yeah.
Not so much to see the
It's
graves,
October.
though those can be quite interesting. But because the trees are going to be glorious, and many cemeteries are arboretums. And here within the Midwest, I've been to 3 now. I've been to Cave Hill down in Louisville,
Yep.
Kentucky. I've been to Spring Grove over in Cincinnati, Ohio, and now Crown Hill Cemetery here in Indianapolis. And listening to the arboretum lady. What are they
Docent,
called? Arborist.
arborist, the
The
docent
arborist.
arborist or arborist docent. Yeah.
It was interesting the challenges they faced there in the cemetery.
Similar to mine. My challenges in my garden, except for we don't have any old
So
graves hanging around, but I have a lot of these problems. Go ahead.
yeah, you never know. So the first thing she said is they have to worry about deer, and that's when they plant new
Sure.
trees,
They girdle
especially.
them, they brush
and
against them, they cause all
yeah.
kinds of problems.
Well, and so they want to put like a protective fencing around them, but then the public comes in. It's like they don't like to see fencing around trees in the cemetery. They want it to look pretty all the time.
Well, good luck. Okay. And then here's my favorite big old trees swallowing up the old graves.
So yes, so they plant, this goes back to the kind of thing you should think about for your own garden is
Big old
that
trees.
tree that's like a 1 inch around sapling could end up being a huge, huge big tree. And so it'll just kind of take over whatever's beside it. So that cemetery, I think, has been there since the 1800s sometime. She probably told us, but so she says they've had trees that fell because of a storm or rotted out or something. And, then the arborists come back and say, hey, guess what? We just found 2 tombstones. So, and she says the historian at the cemetery is really excited about it because they found something they didn't know was there.
Sure.
So,
and then they have to decide about replanting, don't they?
yes. And so she says she loves it when, not loves, but when an old tree falls or has to be taken out because it's just died or whatever. She said, first, it's very expensive and they don't have unlimited funds. But she says leaving the stump there is fine with her until they're ready to plant, because then the people that are still selling grave sites in that cemetery, it's like you can't sell that when that's where a tree goes. And so she says it's sort of this give and take of having enough places to plant trees, but also remembering that this is
a cemetery.
Yeah. It is a cemetery.
Yeah, that's all interesting. Yeah, I think that's really interesting.
Well, they don't label every tree. They label some. So like when kids come for a school project,
Sure.
Here's 12 trees to find or whatever. So the other thing that they constantly have to worry about, is people want grass like right up to the base of the tree, and you can't always have grass right up to the base of a tree. So just making it nice under there. And
plus it's not good for so this is something that comes up here, since we water a lot because we have to, and since grass takes water, one of the things you have to manage in my garden, for example, is watering my front lawn and not watering it too much for the trees that grow in it, because my front lawn is shaded. So that's something we always have to think about too, because too much water can hurt the trees. So, and I'm looking at my trees right now, and because it's fall and because things have kind of thinned out and you can see the leaves better and stuff because they're turning, I realized that my trees need to have all those little, what are those little sprouts that come out of your trees trunk?
Water sprouts.
The little
water sprouts.
Yeah, those water sprouts. I need to get out my DeWalt clippers and clip those off, because I'm looking at there's a grouping down by the lake, and I did those one day when I was just standing out there. And then I need to do these up here, but I digress. Anyway,
yeah, I
bring
know.
that back to tree care.
Yeah, yes. And one of the things too is proper tree care. So there are certain trees, especially probably in Oklahoma, but in Indiana, like oaks and things, you do not want to trim those until, and she gave how many days it had to be below a certain temperature before they would let them cut into the oaks. Otherwise, they could still get insects get in there and cause bring oak wilt disease. So
we supposedly don't have oak wilt in Oklahoma, cough, cough, but whatever. I think, yeah, I think you got to be careful about all of that stuff, how much you cut into it, how much you're cutting off, things like that. So you found a really interesting, well, you were going to say about your famous cemeteries with trees.
Well, I've already talked about those, but I wanted to bring up, and we
Oh,
brought up this book before, Dee.
yeah, the grave landscapes.
Yes, The Grave Landscapes, 19th Century Cemetery Movement by James R. Cochran and Erica Danilchak. And I think the gentleman, James R. Cochran, passed away maybe right before this book came out.
Uh-huh.
Well, 2012, he passed away. And this book is from, it's not much. It's from 2018. So actually, this book didn't come out until 6 years after he passed away, but he did most of the work for it. It's pretty comprehensive. And Dee, this is I'm holding it up. This is a coffee table book.
Yeah, it sure is.
It's a coffee table book. It's got lots of illustrations, lots of photographs. This is, if you're going to do a Halloweeny kind of display on your coffee table, put your grave landscapes right out there.
If you're a gardener, yeah, you'd be interested
Yeah.
in that. So, one of the points that's made in the book is that as cities grow, cemeteries just outside of the main city, which now are inside most cities because the city grew, they were once the only park for people to visit, and they would go and picnic at the graves. But
Yes.
that's a long-standing tradition too, and we've talked about this before. Even back in Roman times, feast days, the idea of feast days in the Catholic calendar is that these are because people used to go to graves and sit and feast at them because it was one of the few places that they could gather and not get arrested as Christians. That was the beginning of it. And then also because if you're a saint, you've made it to heaven, and so there should have a feast on your death date. It's kind of like an extra birthday. But in spite and also along with that, like in the Mexican culture, the Day of the Dead, right at Halloween,
right,
is also it's a day of honoring your ancestors, going and sitting with your people at their graves. In Chinese culture, they did this too. In some of Japanese culture, they did this too. So the idea of all of this is to honor those who've gone before us and spend a pleasant time in what better place than a park. So that's one of the reasons that they started growing trees. It also has something to do with that natural movement that started, which was all what parks all derived from too.
Right.
So some great, capability, brown landscapes, just all kinds of things. So
yeah. And looking at this book, I'll tell you, many of these cemeteries are on the National Register of Historic Places.
Mm-hmm.
And what's interesting, and there are famous landscape architects that were just involved in the laying out of many of these things.
Sure.
And I looked, and oddly enough, and I think it's because I don't know the name of the cemetery, but I've actually visited a couple of cemeteries in New Orleans.
Yeah, me too.
They have tours that you can go on where they talk about those. And those are interesting because people are actually buried in cement
Crypts.
Vaults above ground, crypts.
Because the water table's too high. You don't want them floating up.
No.
So they bury them above ground, which is why they're so interesting and classic and so different from where you and I live.
Yes. But anyway, it's just like we decided that would be our flower topic to talk about, think a little bit before you plant trees. And when you're planting trees on a grand scale in a place like a cemetery, you've got extra problems. And then we've an excellent book for decorating your coffee table. I mean, we have offered it all, Dee.
We sure have. You want me to do a quote?
Yes, because we'll talk about our next topic,
which will be shorter. As for mending, I think it's good to take the time to fix something rather than throw it away. It's an antidote to wastefulness and to the need for immediate gratification. You get to see a whole process through, beginning to end, nothing abstract about it. You'll always notice the fabric scar, of course, but there's an art to mending. If you're careful, the repair can actually add to the beauty of the thing because it's a testimony to its worth. And that's by Elizabeth Berg, The Art of Mending. And I found this online, And I just thought it was beautiful because while it refers to mending and not wasting, I think gardens are that too. I think there's an organic process as a gardener. And part of this is because I'm writing about the bones of my garden right now. And
Uh-huh.
so, I'm thinking a lot about how organically it changed and I got better at it over time. And there's been a lot of mending in the garden. Mending.
Yes. And so I looked up The Art of Mending by Elizabeth Berg. It's actually a novel.
I'd like to read it. I like Elizabeth Berg. I've read several of her novels.
It says revelations about a seemingly ordinary mother force her adult children. Wait, I've said that wrong. Revelations about a seemingly ordinary mother force her adult children to re examine their lives in this absorbing novel about family secrets.
She always writes about family secrets, you know?
So, anyway, yeah, it might
Interesting.
be. Maybe we should have a little D and Carol's Most Excellent Little Guard or book thing, and we'll read that together.
Yeah, because I sure do like that line because I think it's true. And my grandparents mended everything. They wasted nothing. But of course, they were people of the Depression, and of course they did. So Elizabeth Berg has written some really great books. She's also written a book called A Year of Pleasures.
So I was going to say something else, but we're going to go off on a deep end if we don't just like circle back around here, D.
Okay,
Vegetables.
circling back, vegetables, growing vegetables in a greenhouse or a cold frame in the winter, which is really about sunlight. And I wrote several articles about it for Family Handyman because I have a greenhouse and they wanted you to write these articles. And you said, I think you should have Dee write these because, well, she has a greenhouse
Yeah, and Carol doesn't.
and
And
cold frame.
Carol doesn't grow vegetables in the fall and winter.
And
She starts.
yeah, because, well, nobody really grows them, they harvest them. And we talked a little bit about this last week, but one thing I wanted to say about those articles is, all of those articles were based on searches online,
Yes,
right? And so
yes.
one of the things that they wanted me to write was how to grow vegetables or how to grow something in a cold frame greenhouse. And I was like, there is no such thing. And I can't tell you how much we went round and round about that. And I think the title still says cold frame greenhouse, but in the first paragraph, I pointed out there is no such thing. A greenhouse, by its very definition, is heated. Cold frames, by
Well,
their very definition, are not. But a hot box
yes,
is. And so, anyway, I think there's 3 articles about all of that stuff. And that's kind of a funny thing.
right. And the other thing I was going to say, because we're already going off topic so often, is many of our family handyman articles are disappearing.
Yeah.
Some of them are reappearing on MSN.com,
Which we don't understand why, but okay.
which is I don't care. I mean,
Who
the
cares?
agreement says you write it, you get paid. Now they owns it forever.
They do, and they do with it what they will, which is how most online writing went. So, one of the things we love are books, as you know, and one of the best books on harvesting is The 4-Season Harvest Organic Vegetables from Your Home Garden All Year Long, which was written way back in 1992. And it was a really good one. It says there's a foreword by Barbara Damrosch. Who wrote that book?
Right. Well, her husband, Elliot
I thought
Coleman,
so.
wrote the book.
Yeah, Elliot wrote it.
And
Yeah.
my apologies, but this is a revised and expanded version that I have.
Mm,
And so this, if you can find this book, and I think you can easily find used copies of it. It's kind of a classic, but they've got all kinds of information about how to do root crops, root cellars, indoor harvesting. If you really want to get into winter gardening for food, then you would do well to have something like this on your bookshelf.
right. Or you can search several different places online and find out more stuff about the winter greenhouse and greenhouse gardening. I'll say this. My greenhouse, okay, so I use my cold frames. In fact, there's lettuce in one right now, and I tried to start something else in the other side and it just never took off. So it's time to replant. But I'm not, the level of the light is so low in the middle of winter. And we've discussed this before, that nothing's really growing. It's just in a holding pattern. And if you can get it grown up to the point where it's just ready to harvest, you can harvest all winter because the cold frame and the greenhouse will often hold those cold winter crops for you. My greenhouse is too warm to grow winter crops in because I do keep it pretty warm. And because I'm keeping tropicals in there. So I'm trying not to let it go below 45 degrees. So I try to keep it in the 50s. So it's complicated. I refer people to a great book like his.
Yeah, Four Season Harvest. And they, they have information here. Like they traveled to France in the wintertime and they talked about what they grow in France and how to do cold frames, how to do, they call them hot boxes, I think, where you
hot boxes are heated
heat.
cold frames. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's just a lot to it. Go for it. I'm not doing it. I got other things to do in the winter.
It's something I get asked about every year because honest to goodness, new gardeners think you can just throw that seed in there and you'll just harvest things all winter long. And it's just a little more complicated than that.
Yeah. Now, of course, I'm going to do microgreens all winter long, but
yeah, you can totally grow those. Somebody wrote me this week. Maybe that'll be our question for next week. Yeah.
And you kind of get tired of me talking about microgreens, but my actual garden club would like me to talk about microgreens for the November 2025 meeting. And I said, sure.
I don't know how you're going to do a really long topic on that, but you probably can.
Well, I'll do, I'll come up with something.
You will. Didn't you talk about it this year and you planted all these microgreens to take with you?
I did. Yes, I did. I did. And so what happened with that, I thought I told you. So I used some old potting soil and I realized that there were a lot of like gnats and stuff.
Ew. Yeah.
And then like one of the day's crops kind of went sour on me because it didn't get water like I thought it did. And so then I thought, well, I'm not going to take these in there and then they say, where did all these gnats come from?
Right.
So I'm changing my method. And remember, I talked about that True Leaf sells these little, I think they're like 5x5 sheets that are like a wood pulp that's compressed and dry, and you soak it in water, and then it makes a
perfect mat, a growing mat.
A growing mat. That's why, and I'm doing that, and then far less problem with gnats. But I haven't started it back up because I've got the traps. I want to make sure that I'm like gnat free before I start it up again, because even those, if they see that moisture, they're like, ooh, we can start our colonies again. Let's go.
Gosh, they're such a nightmare.
So anyway, I'll wait another few weeks and then I'll start in on those. So that's what I'm doing. But anyway.
Cool. Good for you. You want to do the next quote?
Yes, you gave me a very long quote here.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Masha just leaped across the entire keyboard and I'm lost. Okay, I'm back. All right.
October's Bright Blue Weather by Helen Hunt Jackson. When gentians roll their fingers tight to save them for the morning, and chestnuts fall from satin burrs without a sound of warning. When on the ground red apples lie in piles like jewels shining, and redder still on old stone walls are leaves of woodbine twining. When all the lovely wayside things their white winged seeds are sowing, and in the fields still green and fair, late aftermaths are growing. When brooks run low and on the brooks, in idle golden freighting, bright leaves sink noiseless in the hush of woods for winter waiting. When comrades seek sweet country haunts by twos and twos together, and count like misers hour by hour October's bright blue weather.
What a lovely poem.
By Helen Hunt
Jackson.
Yes. Count like misers hour by hour October's bright blue weather. And I am reminded, before we get to the bookshelf, October is one of the bluest sky months of the year in Indiana. November is one of the grayest, I think. But on the bookshelf, you found all this stuff. You went off deep on this stuff.
Uh-huh. Can I say something about Helen Hunt Jackson though?
Yes.
Okay.
Keep our listeners in suspense. What did Dee find?
She was a poet and a writer, and she became an activist on behalf of improved treatment of Native Americans by the United States government. And she wrote all kinds of things. And she wrote a book about that called A Century of Dishonor. So she's kind of an important person. But apparently she also liked October.
Exactly.
I like October too,
did.
especially when it cools down like it has today. All right. So on the bookshelf, we didn't have a book this week. And I said, I know, I'll go buy some fall magazines. And I was actually thinking about fall gardening and decorating, but no, they've already gotten rid of those. Whew, those went away in September. Whoosh.
Whoosh.
And in October, it's all about cooking. And of course, I love apples. And so I found two different ones about apples. And then I got all excited about it. And so I sent you a bunch of pictures of the apples. Did you go buy any of the apples and try them?
I didn't because I was at what are called regular grocery stores where they didn't have all those different varieties of apples.
Okay. Well, there you go. So I did. In fact, I'm kind of an apple fanatic. Did you know that?
I kind of got that, because I'm reading and doing stuff, and it's like, oh, another apple variety. Oh, another apple variety.
I mean, I've always loved apples. I've loved apples forever, and I like them fresh. I like them baked. I like them in pies. I like them sautéed, which I made. They call them fried apples, but they're not really fried. I made those for Friday night. I like them in muffins. So for me, these are really good. But how does this relate to gardening, Carol?
Because you found this magazine called Better Homes and Gardens Special Publication, Best Apple Recipes. And you said it's on newsstands now, or you can get copies on eBay.
It's on page 7. On page 7, they came up with the not only best for baking and cooking apples and taste and texture basics, but all the new ones that have come out this year. And you and I talked last year or 2 years ago about the new ones, and the apple hybridizers are just having the best time coming up with new varieties. So I have tried some of these. I'm going to see if you've tried some of these.
Okay.
Are you ready? These are the ones I texted to you.
I am.
Have you tried Cosmic Crisp?
I have seen Cosmic Crisp. I do not think I've purchased Cosmic Crisp.
So Cosmic Crisp is a mix between Honey Crisp and Enterprise. And you can get Honey Crisp a lot of places. I think it's kind of a boring apple. I love Enterprise apples. I have an Enterprise apple tree. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Yeah, you can grow Enterprise apples. And actually, it's a great tree for Oklahoma because it is resistant to cedar apple rust, which is a huge problem because of the blinking junipers that we have, which you wouldn't think that would be cedar apple rust, but it is. Okay, so that's one. I have tried Cosmic Crisp. I want to know from our viewers who have tried it because it's at Walmart now. I think it's boring. Moving on. It's a boring apple. I'll just be honest.
Okay.
Okay. At our local Crest, which is a basic grocery store, is the Lucy varieties. Have you tried the Lucy varieties?
I have not.
The Lucy varieties are interesting because they have red flesh. And there's 3 different kinds of Lucy's, and it blends several different varieties. There's Lucy Glow, which has yellow skin with magenta flesh. Lucy Rose has speckled red skin with red flesh. And the funny part is, I've tried both of these. I personally like Lucy Rose the best. I served Lucy Rose to my granddaughter a couple of days ago, who is also into apples almost as much as tomatoes. And she looked at me and she was very askance because this has pink inside it. And her mom goes, "Look, Maddie, pink inside the apple." And Maddie goes, "Yeah, I don't think I like the pink." And I said, "Try it. You might like it." And she did decide that she liked it. So that's one I've tried. Then they mentioned Cordera, which Cordera was developed at Cornell University. And it is named after the late Robert Lamb, who was an apple breeder there for 40 years. And Cordera means lamb in Spanish, which I did not know. And it's great for eating. I have not tried this apple. I cannot find this apple. I have looked everywhere. Not available in Oklahoma at the present time. Then there's Pink Luster, another one I could not find. Have you found it?
I have not.
Then there was Sunrise Magic, which is interesting because it was created at Washington State University. Okay.
Yes.
And Washington State University is doing a lot of apple breeding right now. And they've got another apple coming out, which I will talk about in my rabbit hole. And then there comes Wild Twist. I found Wild Twist at Whole Foods a couple of weeks ago. This is my favorite apple of the group.
Really?
Probably my favorite apple of the year. And it is a twist between the Crips Pink, which they have renamed as, you'll be familiar with this one, the Pink Lady.
I have seen Pink Lady.
Pink Ladies are everywhere right now, and they changed the Crips Pink to Pink Lady because they wanted it to be more popular. It's a great baking apple. But they twisted it with Honeycrisp, hence the name Wild Twist.
Yes.
It is a great apple. It is nice and tart, extremely crisp, but at the end, it has that great apple flavor, which a lot of apples are missing anymore, right? They're kind of bland. They're kind of boring. They're just blah. And I am into apples. You know, our friend the other day, Sharon Lovejoy, said that I sounded really tired on the podcast. When she listens to this one, she will see I am not tired because I'm an apple fanatic. All right, next is the sugar bee. I hate the sugar bee. I'm just going to say it. The sugar bee is a mixture. My child is calling me. I don't know why. The sugar bee is, they say it's creamy white flesh, yellow flecked red skin. It is a beautiful apple, a smallish apple. It is a Minnesota honeybee cross-pollinated with another one. It's supposed to be extra sweet. Maybe the ones I've been getting aren't quite ripe, but they just taste green. So maybe I should give it another try.
Maybe. So let me ask you let me give you 4 varieties of apples, because when I was at Purdue, my first professor of horticulture, they were into apple breeding.
Yes, they were.
And I pulled up this article. There were 48 varieties since 1945 that have been developed at Purdue, and they have 18 patents.
Right.
And most of them, they said, are in Europe, are mostly grown in Europe, New Zealand, and Australia. But let me give you some. Gold Rush.
I've had it. It tastes like a golden delicious.
Yes. Pixie Crunch.
Nope.
Crimson Crisp.
No, but I suspect that it's based on, okay. It's probably parentage for Cosmic Crisp, but go ahead. Somewhere.
Juliet.
I've had Juliet. Yeah. Small.
They said Juliet is currently the best-selling organic apple variety in Europe.
Yeah, and it's sold here occasionally at Natural Grocer because it's over in the organic line. So it must have really good disease resistance, and that's why it's so popular. Interestingly, you said some of these are in New Zealand. New Zealand, if you remember from last year's apple conversation, New Zealand is one of the biggest places for breeding new apples. We did a whole thing on the New York Times, wrote an article about all of these different apple varieties that were coming out. And New Zealand was one of the big places that breeds apples. So is Washington State, obviously. And Cornell's obviously still a big part too. There's also another big orchard that's doing some work on apples and has brought out, I think they're the ones who brought out Wild Twist. And I will talk more about them in my rabbit hole. So you can see that not only on the bookshelf did I get this fabulous magazine, along with Southern Living's best fall recipes, these special interest magazines, which has an apple tart on the front.
Yes, I was going to say yes.
But this one has lots of savory stuff too. See, savory things.
I do.
But I was going to say that these special edition deals, these publishers make a lot of money off of these because they're more expensive and they're timely. And people are more likely to do them. The old publisher standby used to be everybody subscribed. Well, people don't subscribe to stuff as much anymore. And so Southern Living, which is now owned by Time, isn't it? Owned by Time Mag?
I think so.
You know, interesting. This Southern Living publication was done by Meredith, the king of special interest.
Well, isn't Meredith under the Time label
Yeah, I
now?
think they might be under the Time label now, but they're the ones who do Better Homes and Gardens.
Right.
I can't
Right.
really keep up with who owns whom anymore because,
Right.
be honest, I don't care. Nobody ever asked me to write for these anyway, so why would I care? So,
So go ahead.
yes, quickly, taste and texture basics. So, tart varieties, I don't even want to talk about those, but one of them I will talk about Ida Red, great baking apple, used a lot in breeding. Now, sweet varieties. Do you like a sweet apple or a tart apple or
I
sweet
like a
tart?
sweet apple.
Okay, for
Like a
sweet
sweet
ones,
one.
Empire,
Yeah.
Fuji, you can find that at any grocery store.
Yes.
Gala, I'm so bored with, but thank God Gala replaced Red Delicious as the favorite apple to snack on. Golden Delicious, Honey Crisp, which is being used as a breeder in all of these
Right.
varieties, right? Pink Lady, which is Crips Pink, as we know now. Also another great breeder apple. And good old Sugar Bee, which probably explains why I don't like Sugar Bee. I don't like it at all.
Exactly.
Because D likes sweet tart varieties like Cosmic Crisp, which I would still say is very sweet. Jonagold, I don't like the texture. Jonathan, which is part of the Jonagold, I don't like the texture. Pinata, I have yet to try. Ooh. Ruby Frost, yet to try. Sweet Tango, I love Sweet Tango. Sweet Tango is delicious. So, crisp apples, Brayburn, a very good apple. Empire, it's a good apple. It's very sweet. It's very crisp. I hate mushy apples. Gala, yeah, if they haven't been kept too long in storage. Honeycrisp and Pink Lady. And then juicy apples are Ambrosia, I've eaten a lot of. Cameo, I've eaten a lot of. Envy, that's my second favorite apple on the planet. It's a great
Really?
apple. My son and I talk about envy apples all the time. Fuji and Granny Smith. And I have one quick tip for anybody who bakes. Use a variety of apples in your baking. Use both sweet varieties and tart varieties. It gives more depth of flavor. Okay, I'm finished now.
That's quite interesting. So now give us a quote to take us into the dirt.
You should do the quote. I just jabbered on forever.
Just do the quote.
But a brave brown bird sang, oh, I'm sorry. I started at the wrong place. I meant to do my work today, but a brown bird sang in the apple tree, and a butterfly flitted across the field, and all the leaves were calling me. That's by Richard La Gallienne. Our dirt. You talk. I'm tired.
So our dirt is, I think I found this, which is this fern frenzy, the Chelsea Physic Garden. There was something about it somewhere on Instagram, and they talked about the fern hunting craze that the Victorians had, and they call it pteridomania, Pteridomania, peritodomia, or fern fever. So a little bit of a rabbit hole, but the Victorians really just went after ferns like crazy.
I like ferns.
And so I found an article in Atlas Obscura that talked about how the title is How the Victorian Fern Hunting Craze Led to Adventure, Romance, and Crime. An obsession with ferns gripped the era's amateur botanist. And it talked about how no matter whether you were poor or middle class or wealthy, people just went nuts for ferns because they could, the Wardian case had been invented, and so people could put them in their Wardian cases. And
I have a Wardian case, and guess what I put in it? Ferns when I want it, when I have it out, because ferns are great in the wintertime because
they are.
Sorry, I just clicked my table. They're great in the wintertime, and we have very dark winters, and they really have dark winters in England and New England. So, I can see why they'd want a little green at their fingertips.
I can see that too. So it says in this article, and we'll put this article out there because it's fun to read how nuts these people went. It's like, what are these, like Pokemons, or are these like
remember Pokemon Go?
Yeah. People, yeah, I do remember. I did not get into Pokemon Go. Thank you very much.
Because you don't like things to know your location, and you have to know your location.
Right.
Pokemon Go. So
they said because fern hunting was fashionable among both sexes and the trips would sometimes end up as all-nighters, romance was known to thrive among amateur botanists. Some of the fern-born romances were even built to last. When California botanist John Gill Lemon and Sarah Plummer were married, they chose to go on a grand plant safari in the Catalina Mountains for their honeymoon.
God.
Instead of the usual stupid and expensive visit to a watering place. That's in quotes.
So
Anyway.
stupid and what? Stupid and expensive at a what? A watering place?
Yeah, like go to the beach or something.
Oh.
The honeymoon, they said, topped that experience. The couple ended up wrangling rattlesnakes, chasms, rock slides, fields of cacti, endless heat and cold. They crossed deserts and stayed on the camps horse thieves had abandoned. They also ran out of supplies. So, yeah, that was a trip of a lifetime, all in pursuit of ferns.
Okay.
And then I realized, I got a little bit of a fern thing growing in my great room.
It's because you like green.
Well, a long time ago, 4 or 5 years ago, there was a blank spot above my TV, and I thought, I'm just going to get some botanical prints up there. And I ended up getting like 3 real cheap prints. They are cheap of ferns. And I thought, well, these will do until I get something better. And then when I went to buy my couch and my new chair, I got a fern print for the chair and matching fern print on the pillows. And I already had a fern print pillow. And I thought, oh my gosh, I have pterodomania. I didn't even know it.
You do not have pterodomania. You want to know what's above my television set in the living room?
What?
It's a painting of a tornado.
I knew that. As soon as you said that, I thought, is that where you put your tornado
That's
print?
where I put my tornado painting.
Anyway,
only an Oklahoman would go and buy a real piece of art that's tornado.
Well, and the article pointed out that the American Fern Society is still in existence. So some people are still into ferns. And then I have to mention one of my lost ladies, Grace A. Wilson, wrote a book about ferns. And I almost tossed it aside because it was G.A. Wilson. And I just happened to look. Yeah, I didn't realize it was her. But she had to write many of her articles using just her initials because the men would not have taken seriously her articles if they knew she had written them. But she was like the fern lady of the early 1900s.
That's funny. Only the men didn't know she was a lady. So let's move on.
All right. I'm going to do this quote, which we've done before, but it's like we have to do it.
It's a yearly one.
It was October again, all red and gold with mellow mornings when the valleys were filled with delicate mists as if the spirit of autumn had poured them in for the sun to drain. Amethyst, pearl, silver, rose, and smoke blue. The dews were so heavy that the fields glistened. That is L.M. Montgomery, Anne of Green Gables.
You know, I didn't read Anne of Green Gables until I think it was 2 years ago with the well-written.
I haven't read it yet.
And I'd always tried to read it and didn't like it. And one of my friends said, well, you need to read it. It's an important book. And she's right. It is an important book. And you know what? I did like it. It took me a long time to get into it. And there's some thought that if you're a big fan of Little Women, you might not be a big fan of Anne of Green Gables and vice versa, because they're almost the same time period and very different writing styles and very different places. But I can now say that I am a fan of all of Ellen Montgomery's work. And I'm also a fan of all of the Little Women stuff too. Although Little Women is still my favorite. One of my favorite.
Well, I have not read Anne of Green Gables, but she is on my list of classic books I never read in high school or middle school or whatever, that just because they never crossed my path. My teachers didn't say you should read this, and I'm catching up on them.
I thought she wasn't edgy enough, but I misunderstood her. Okay, so rabbit holes. I'm just going to go into mine again. It's probably my whole apple fascination, if you couldn't tell. And while I was doing research for this article, such as it was, I made apple muffins, apple cake, apple galette, apple salad. Oh, and the aforementioned sauteed or fried apples. And so I really like apples. And then I just wanted to say that Washington State University has created a new apple, and they let people choose the name. And I think it's already done because you had to have it in by May. And their previous introduction, the recent one, is Cosmic Crisp. And it isn't my favorite, but it's okay. It's a little too sweet for me. And then I wonder what this one will taste like. But supposedly this apple won't hit the stores until 2029, and they will not announce the apple's name until after the election. That was actually in the article because they know it won't get any press and they want their apple to get press. And so,
Sure.
meanwhile, while they've been doing that, the Hess Brothers Fruit Company, which I don't know where they're located, but they are the ones who have created Wild Twist, which is a mix between Crips Pink, aka Pink Lady, and the Sweet Honey Crisp. So it is both, it is a twist between sweet and not sweet, sweet and tart. And so I've been obsessed with apples this week and I can still feel it in my bones.
I could not tell that you were obsessed, Dee. I could.
So that's my rabbit hole. It was going to be something
dear.
else. And then I thought, no, it's definitely the apples.
All right. I got the title for our podcast.
Obsessed with apples. So Carol's rabbit hole is
My rabbit holes. I mentioned, like there are books that everybody's like, oh, we read that in high school or whatever. But, depending on where you went, you might have read something else. So
right.
This week I did finish listening to The Hobbit. So now I can say that I have read the book. Now, did I pay?
Did you like The Hobbit?
I have seen the Hobbit movies, so I knew what to expect. And
Sure.
it was nice to do it as an audiobook because the songs that the dwarfs sang and stuff, the
They
guy
actually
sang
sang 'em?
those. Yeah, so that was kind of nice. So I'm not saying that I caught every little battle and skirmish and everything, but
I just
the
skipped the
Hobbit left.
songs because I don't.
The Hobbit left. The Hobbit went on adventures. The Hobbit came back.
Yes, and the Hobbit has a ring now, which causes a
Yes.
lot of trouble later.
Yes, in Lord of the Rings. But anyway, and then I'm still reading those mysteries by MC Beaton. I don't know if this is a rabbit hole, but I believe that I am the only one in the world who has got, always have a hardback, a Kindle book, and an audio book going. So this week on my Kindle is Death of a Maid, which is number 22 in the Hamish Macbeth series.
Okay.
By MC Beaton. As my hardback, I have Killing Time, which is 35 out of 35. And those,
Raisin.
remember?
Yeah.
Agatha Raisin. I did all those as audiobooks.
Yeah.
This is the first one I've actually read. And I thought, I probably like them better as audiobooks, but I'm going to finish reading that. And then for the audiobook, I finished Sick of Shadows, which was number 3 of 4 in her Edwardian mystery series with Lady Rose Summers. Okay. Yes, there were only 4 books.
Must not have
Lady
sold
Rose
like
Summers.
Okay.
No. Anyway, I'm on Our Lady of Pain, which is number 4 of 4. I just started that one.
Our Lady
of
Pain, really?
Our Lady Rose Summer is a debutante who is she's solving the mysteries, but she's got the constraints of Edwardian society where her parents don't let her out without chaperones and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, and I'm starting research on the next Lost Lady of Garden Writing. I think it's going to be Irma B. Wild, who was more of an illustrator, but she did have one children's wildflower book.
I wonder if I have it. Who knows? I will find out. I like wildflower books and I like children's gardening books, which are not easy to find. All right. So,
and I cannot believe, now wait a minute. I cannot believe how prolific MC Beaton was with her writing.
I can't either.
Hamish Macbeth book and an Agatha Raisin book every single year.
Did she die?
There's these, she died. Yes.
I thought so.
But there's somebody, she left this.
No. They're
certain writers responsible to carry on. And so I'm like, does Hamish die out? It's like, no, there was one that came out in 22 or 23. And like, when I get done with Hamish and I'm on 22 of 34 and I'll get done, then I'll be caught up.
Okay, cool. Garden commitments. All right. I'm going to plant my peony roots before they either rot or totally dry out. I was waiting on the blasted armadillo because I have a spot right in front of my new bird bath. And that's where I'm going to put those peonies. And they're 3 light pink ones because this year I'm going to have enough peonies, not from these, but from my other peonies. I'm really focusing on being able to bring some in.
Very good. What else?
Oh, is there more? Oh, I have to cut back a few diseased plants, including some peonies. And then I need to remulch the garden step by step because the armadillo literally dug up every bit of mulch and actually have some dirt on armadillos and gardens for next time. That's a tease.
Very good. That's a tease. So I'm tired of waiting for fall to slowly arrive. I'm going to start clearing out the containers on the back patio. I more or less stopped watering them and start putting away all that quote unquote patio stuff before I'm doing it when it's sleeting, because it'll be snap and it'll go from this calm, normal, warm fall to really cold. There's enough leaves. I'm going to start cleaning up leaves in the grass and putting them on the vegetable beds after I pull out some of the weeds, because those weeds, they come up
We
quick.
got some bad weeds. Yeah.
I'm also going to start planting some of the bulbs for spring flowers. I've got alliums, a couple of Asiatic lilies, crocuses, and tulips. So I'm going to start planting those, start getting those in the ground. I got to go to my sister's condo. We're going to plant some tulips over at her place. Stuff like that. That's going to be my week.
I'm going to wait on the bulbs just for people in Oklahoma and Texas. You guys need to wait a while. It's not been cold. We got to wait till it's cold, which might not be until the end of November, beginning of December, the way things are looking this year.
Well, I feel like I'm pushing a little bit early, but I think they'll be fine. And it's not going to get warmer. At your house,
yeah, because you guys get colder faster than we do.
Well, yes, but we have 2 afternoons, Tuesday, Wednesday, I think next week. By the time this comes out, we'll know if it happened, that have highs listed as 81, which is kind of warm for October.
We've been in the 90s for like a month. And so now
you win.
Now it's going to calm down, I hope. I'm looking at my watch just to see. But alas, I turned it on Do Not Disturb, so it doesn't show. All right. So is that it for this week? Are we finished?
That is it. I'm going to wrap us up. Thank you for listening to The Garden Angelist. I hope you've hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single episode. We publish every week on Wednesdays at 12 a.m. Eastern Time.
If you subscribe to our free Substack newsletter, you'll get a link to the podcast a whole day early.
And if you want to help support us, use those affiliate links. If you buy something after clicking through on them, we're in a small commission and it costs you nothing.
Or you can set up a monthly subscription through Buzzsprout or make a one-time donation through PayPal.
Thank you to everyone who has done so. It helps us pay for podcast hosting.
It was lovely to chat with all of you over the Garden Gate this week. Bye.
Bye, everybody.